let's complete the quick Lowell PowerPoint. So please take that out and please follow along as I present. Alright guys, so the name of this PowerPoint is Early 19th Century Industrialization in America, the Lowell System. Alright, so please turn the page. Alright, I went too far already. Alright, Samuel Slater, known as the father of the factory system. Alright, he predates the Lowell system. Alright, Francis Cabot Lowell is the guy responsible for the Lowell system. Slater was one of the earliest figures in the U.S. to build a factory. So if you look underneath the slide, I'm going to read some notes here. He took advantage of the need for manufacturing during Jefferson's Embargo Act of 1807. Alright, so basically in 1807 Jefferson was trying to get the English to stop messing with our trading ships and stop impressing our sailors into their Royal Navy. So Jefferson thought the old school Revolutionary era embargoes would work to stop trading with Britain. They did not. Nevertheless, in 1807, Jefferson basically shut off our import-export process. So basically he closed off our borders, meaning we didn't buy anything from Europe for a couple of years after 1807. So what that meant is think about this for a second. He's the guy who was very pro-agriculture. The whole Jeffersonian vision of independent Yankee farmers loathed cities and manufacturing. You know, wanted London to remain the armpit of Europe, making things for everybody else. He inadvertently ignited manufacturing in this country. You know, if we couldn't buy it from Europe, where are we going to get it? We're going to make it ourselves. All right, so Samuel Slater took advantage of the need for manufacturing and built the first factory. All right, factory is short for manufactory. All right, he built it in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. It was the first cotton mill. The next facts down here don't really matter. What you also need to know about Samuel Slater is he was unable. What makes his factory different from Lowell is that he was unable to produce the entire thing in-house. He couldn't go from cotton to linens all in the factory. He actually had to hire parts of the process out to families, to mothers and kids, to do things during the production process that he couldn't complete in-house. All right, so it's different from the Lowell system. All right, so I'm going the wrong way again. All right, the essential question: what was life like for the Lowell girls, and how and why, or why and how, did they fight back? All right. That was unintentional. That wasn't a mistake. That was unintentional. All right, so this is just a photograph of the beginnings of the Lowell town, 1814. Francis Cabot Lowell is the one responsible for the Lowell system. All right, when we say the first dual-purpose textile plant, what we mean to say is it was the first one able to manufacture raw cotton into cloth all in-house. Please turn the page. This is another image of Lowell in 1850. As you can see, it got busier. All right. This is a more clear image of what the Lowell boarding houses looked like. The factory workers would have lived in the one to the right here, and this would have been actually that would have been a boarding house also. These all would have been boarding houses. The factory was not that tall. All right. The factories themselves are maybe 3 or 4 floors, 3 or 4 stories tall. All right, that's a textile loom. So at first, in 1820, when the Yankee farm girls were hired, they were responsible for one loom that was self-propelled, meaning it was propelled by the river, in which the water wheel was dipped, into which the water wheel was dipped, and the workers were there just to troubleshoot things that go wrong, to keep things flowing nicely, to keep kinks from happening or to undo kinks that happened. Sometimes the cotton breaks, so they were there to troubleshoot. Now, that being said, while it didn't take all that much skill to watch over the machine, it did get hectic at times, especially over the years, because as you will see, the operatives, the women, were put in charge of more than one machine eventually. You know, by the time we get to the 1840s and beyond, they get put in charge of first a second machine, then a third, then a fourth. So the employers begin to try and stretch out what the workers can do. All right. Now, again, the workers in the textile mills, the women, they came less expensive than male workers. They were easier to intimidate. uh, and the workers had less bargaining rights because the looms did not require that much skill. The general rule of thumb on the shop floor in the factory is the more skill you have, the greater your bargaining position, because you're less replaceable. If it's totally unskilled, you can be replaced quite easily, but if you're skilled, you can't really be replaced all that easily. All right. So to show you just how ubiquitous textile mills were in New England, this is the 1830s. The larger the circle, the largest circles represent mills that had 3,000 or more employees. As you can see, Lowell is a quite large purple circle there. All right, so Lowell was not the only town with textile mills, but it's the one we're going to be focusing on. It's the one that's most well known. All right, so you see some photographs of Lowell workers. All right, again, this is what the appearance of Lucy is based on. All right, a photograph which is after the 1820s and 30s, but nevertheless, it's still a textile mill. All right. So what was their typical profile? If you look underneath the slide here, all right, Boston Associates, the owners, they sought to govern their mills through more stringently enforced rules and regulations. Lots of rules and regulations. When you guys prepare for the talk show, you're going to get the timetable, the schedule, basically. The same type of thing you guys follow in a school day. All right, but imagine if it followed you home. They had about 20 mills, 6,000 workers. It was mostly female. 85% of them were single, ages 15 to 29. The average age was 24. They were mostly from New England. They were, quote, in need of guidance, at least in the eyes of men. They were in need of guidance, meaning we need to make sure they stay virtuous. And to be sure, remember, think about it as a woman for a second. I mean, women have lots of social rules to follow, social expectations of their behavior and their appearance. Now, while you may not like all of these rules, you may not love these rules or want to follow all these rules, do you? I mean, you still follow societal expectations. So, on one hand, it would be an overstatement to say that the women at these textile mills liked these rules because they self-enforced it. I mean, they did self-enforce these rules. They made sure that they all follow these rules together. Nevertheless, it would be an overstatement to say they liked these rules. They followed them because that was what was expected of them by society, the same way you do today. All right. Some of them may have been helping the family's finances, or they may have been desperate for the income. But remember, the majority of them, as we know from the letters they wrote home, they were there not to send money home, but to gain some economic independence from the farm. All right, the Lowell boarding houses. You can see a modern-day photograph of that boarding house right here down the river. Okay, they lived apart from their families in dormitories. Examples of rules were no drinking, no breaking the Sabbath. You've got to go to church on Sundays. No foul language. They were required to show feminine manners, and there was a strict curfew. They lived there year-round. Men were generally not allowed inside the boarding houses. About 25 women lived in each boarding house, up to 6 sharing a bedroom. One worker described her room as a small, comfortless, half-ventilated apartment containing some half a dozen occupants. Trips away from the boarding house were uncommon. The Lowell girls worked and ate together, and they could get time off if they agreed to cover each other. All right, so their time off was their responsibility. They were responsible to get someone to cover for them, basically. Newcomers were mentored by older women in areas such as how to dress, how to speak, how to behave, and generally the ways of that Lowell community. The Lowell girls were expected to attend church and demonstrate morals befitting proper society and their role in it. All right, an 1848 handbook to Lowell proclaimed that, quote, the company will not employ anyone who is habitually absent from public worship on the Sabbath or known to be guilty of immorality. Remember, they had to keep those women virtuous. All right, so this is, it's more modern day, but it still gives you an idea of what it looked like inside the Lowell textile mills. What you see that is steel there would have been wooden in the 1820s. All right, but you see a pulley system, or at least it would have been a pulley system back then, of basically going up the floors and above their heads, being initially propelled by the water and the water wheel. All right, so that is the end of the PowerPoint.